Hello there, guys. This is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and today I'm wrapping up my February reading and telling you my March TBR. So forgive the ski jacket; it's cold, and I've just been out walking, and I'm not going to be able to stay long. It is Friday, February 14th, so it's a little bit later than I normally begin this video. But let's jump into it. That's where we are today, and that's fine. So let's start off. I just have this one open, so why not start off with Radical by David Platt. I'm in my Christian nonfiction era. I'm just reading it voraciously every chance that I get, and I'm really enjoying it. So this one is something my home group is reading. They really love David Platt, and he really has a heart for missions, and he wants missions to be kind of something that every Christian is involved in. And I think that's really cool. He has this really global mindset, and I think he's speaking specifically to the American church, because the American church, although we give to missions, we don't necessarily have a global mindset. And this is something I'm very aware of just as a language learner. You know, most Americans don't feel the need to learn another language because they wouldn't use it in their daily life unless they really stepped out of their daily living in order to do so. Because America is a pretty big place and everybody wants to learn English. So, we just don't really learn languages here. And that's definitely an over exaggeration. But I see that our mindset is very we love America. It's very patriotic here. It's almost a religious experience. American politics. And so sometimes thinking globally, it can be difficult for Americans. And I understand that. I love America too. And I think it's a wonderful place to live. But he is really trying to get you to think outside of that a little bit. And it's called Radical because it is really radical. And I definitely had some critical thoughts going through my mind as I was reading this. I don't know if they're really all warranted. I think it gave me a lot of anxiety, which, that's fine. Sometimes people who challenge you do give you anxiety, and sometimes that's productive anxiety, and sometimes it helps you reevaluate. And I think it's good to reevaluate our Christian lives and our reading lives and everything. It's good to just reevaluate things, and not just take it for granted that you're on the right track. And that's really what he's calling you to do. His whole challenge at the end of the book. Part of my problem was I think I didn't know where he was going with it for most of the book. At the end of the book, he has a challenge that he gives you, and I'm like, okay, I understand now. I understand. At the beginning, he's very kind of vague at times, and he basically just sounds really down on America, really down on American churches, really down on people who are they have a heart for America and serving America. And I know throughout the book he was saying, that's not my intention. And I was like, yeah, but what is your intention? I didn't really understand his intention from page 1, which I feel like is a really good thing for a nonfiction book to do. Lay out the intention, and then you can build your case. You're not going to turn people away if you lay out your intention, because they picked up your book wanting to know your intention. Sometimes you can. I understand that fear for nonfiction authors. The worry is if I lay out my entire argument and they just want to judge it instantly without hearing all of my pro arguments for it, they might just drop it. But people are going to do that anyways. The people who do that, they're probably just going to read book rag summaries, and they're not going to read your book anyways. So I think the best way to write a nonfiction book is lay out your intent very specifically from the beginning, and then spend the rest of the book supporting it and telling why. And if he had done that, I would have been probably 95% on board. But throughout most of the book, I was really just confused and stressed. But it was exciting too. So it was a really emotional experience, I have to say. It was very, very emotional reading this. I really wanted to like it. But yeah, I feel like he really leaned into the whole radical idea. And unfortunately, that just didn't work for me very well. So unfortunately, however, the whole point completely makes sense. The subtitle is Taking Back Your Faith from the American Dream. His whole idea is spend a year kind of reevaluating your life. And his challenges are read the Bible in a year, pray through the world, pray for the whole world for a year, like Operation World. If you guys have heard of that, they have a website and an app, which it gives you just enough information about different countries to pray for the churches in those countries. And so those are two of his challenges. Another of his challenge is travel somewhere that's outside of your immediate area and work on like a gospel oriented mission, for like a week. He's like, literally do it for a week. And it might take a year of planning to do it for a week, depending on where you go. But his whole idea is he was told from people that he went to their countries on missions. Like, was it Somalia? I don't remember exactly where. And they were like, we love it if people can send us money, that's really helpful, but we love it even more when people come to visit us and show up for us. And encourage us in person. And so his whole thing is going in person and meeting with international believers is really important. Going to the unreached and the unchurched who've never heard the name of Jesus, except for, in a swear word. My friend Tiffany and I were talking about this. There's people in America who've never heard the name of Jesus except for in a swear word, or God. So yeah, I think his whole point is get out of your kind of comfortable bubble and try to think, how can I help somebody who isn't as fortunate as I am? The American dream is not Jesus's dream, and he makes that really clear. He pulls a lot of scriptural examples, and in the beginning I was like, you're pulling them out of context though. But once I understood what he was trying to do, I was like, okay, I like it now. I like it. It's a good book. But I would still rate it like a 3 out of 5 stars because it was just not the best reading experience. It could have been much more streamlined and I would have liked it a lot more, but still it was inspiring. So I think it was helpful for us because it helped us think in terms of what would be something that we could do to help the international church, or to grow the church internationally, or to reach somebody who doesn't know Jesus at all. And I realized some of our life activities do that locally. And that's his goal ultimately, is get people to involve themselves locally in those kinds of missions where places that aren't comfortable, where people who just want to be comfortable wouldn't go. He's trying to get the American church to leave the comfort of their lives and go somewhere where people need help and they're not comfortable at all. Because it's hard when you're comfortable, you like your life, you feel like things are going well. It's hard to get out of that and like, okay, I'm going to intentionally disrupt that. I'm going to intentionally disrupt that comfort, make myself uncomfortable because my fellow humans are living there all the time. And so we should be there too. We should be there for them in that discomfort. So I think it's a beautiful thing. His tone was, I feel like the kind of people he's trying to reach, the thing is, the people he's trying to reach aren't going to pick up this book. So the people that he is reaching, I feel like with this book, are mostly people who are already doing what he's saying to a large degree. So yeah, it was very unsuccessful in that way to me, but I still think he has a good message, and I would love to listen to some of his sermons because they sound really good. So there's that. Let me see what time it is. Okay, I have a couple more minutes. I'm going to do one more. Next is 100 Shadows by Hwang Jungeun. Hwang Jungeun. Jungeun or Jungeun? I'm not sure. Romanization is hard. I think it's Jungeun. Anyways, this is a Korean author. And it's a very kind of is surreal the right word? I feel like maybe. Surreal, sort of, but also realistic kind of a story about people living in like the slum of their town, and how kind of strange they find that term. They're like, this isn't a slum, that we live here. This is our neighborhood. And it's kind of talking about how society, particularly Korea, otherizes people who live in those slums and doesn't value them, and how maybe knocking down a building that's considered unsafe or whatever maybe that sounds good on paper and it looks good politically, but really, you're disrupting the lives of the people who live there. And there have been times where there's a particular event, a tragedy that this author is writing about. I forget what it's called, but it's in Crystal's Discord. She shared an article. Oh, I bet I could pull it up on here because I have it up here. I just haven't read it yet because I didn't have time. I didn't know that I was going to be Yongsan disaster. So it's a disaster of like these apartment buildings where there were protesters trying to protest like their area being knocked down in favor of newer, nicer buildings. And the police, this protest went on for a long time, and some really sketchy practices happened at this protest. And I think it was like 8 people ended up dying and like 20 something more were injured. It turned into a fire. It was this really horrible tragedy. And it's kind of one of a pattern in South Korea of instances where economic progress is prioritized over human rights. And that's something that I think a lot of Korean writers that are translated into English are of that frame of mind, like criticizing capitalism. You know, people criticize America for capitalism. South Korea's capitalism is like more intense than America's, in my opinion. I think that they are more. Maybe that's just because it's been going for less time. I think early on our capitalism was crazy. So it's kind of like the critical tradition of that, and saying human rights are just as, if not more important than progress, and how you get how you achieve the progress is just as important as the progress itself, and maintaining human rights while achieving that progress equally important, if not more important. So yeah, there's been several dictators who it's called Miracle on the Han River, Korea is, because of the crazy economic progress that they have managed in like 50 years. It's like the world's 7th largest economy, even though it's really small if you look at it on a map. So they do an amazing job economically, but it's coming at a very high cost. If you read other books too, the amount of hours they work every week, I mean, it's just like workers' rights are somewhat minimal in South Korea. They're better than some countries, but their whole goal is economic progress. And anybody who's not in line with that would have trouble surviving there. Like, I would have trouble surviving there because of my disabilities. I would never be able to live in Korea, I don't think, at least not currently. So yeah, that's what this is about. And I think I would rate it about 3 stars. It's literary. So the whole surrealist aspect is people's shadows are rising up, and if you follow your shadow, you end up dying. And so that wasn't really ever explained what the metaphor exactly means, but I kind of interpreted it as their lives are being determined by other people's choices. And so since their lives are not valued and they're not listened to about what they would like to do with their lives, I think that's why their shadows end up dying. So you're kind of hoping for the narrator and the other main character you're rooting for them to kind of survive this craziness. And we'll just have to see, I guess. Maybe it's sort of, the ending is a little bit like, I don't know. And I think that's because Korea is still writing its own story. So this was a historical event, but Korea can make changes is the goal, I think, of writing this book. So yeah, I think I did enjoy this. This was Crystal's from Fiber Artsy's book club pick for her Asian book club. And I think this was a good first one. So 3 stars for that, 3 stars for Radical. And okay, I'll do one more. I have like 2 minutes left. I also finished my 3rd reread of Judges, which I wrapped up kind of what I thought about Judges in last month's. So I'm trying to read it 10 times in as quick a succession as I can, which is not very quick because of some of the other Bible studies I'm doing. But I did finish my 3rd go around and now I'm on my 4th. So woo, go me. I would like to do it more than once a month though. I would like to read it more than once a month. But anyways, that's it for now. And I will come back to you again soon with more because I have a bunch more books I've already finished. Ow. This is from Dostoevsky in Space, and I'm coming at you with another update for my February wrap up and January TBR. So today it is Saturday, February 22nd at 11:15 a.m. And let's talk about it. There's something I might come back later and talk some more with you guys because I might have time to finish something else, but I'm just gonna go with what I finished so far. I'm in the middle of a lot of things too, so hopefully I'll finish some more by the end of the month. But first of all, I did finish Purgatory by Dante Alighieri. I can't remember if I talked about this because I didn't keep track of it very well, but I read this for We Love Jenny, and I actually read most of it last month, and then I believe it was this one actually that I was reading that I started with and I was loving it. And then it went back to the library and all the other ones that I tried were not as good. They didn't have good summaries. I mean, this was, if this is, John Chiardi, I think this is the one that I was loving the most. I'll have to go back and double check, but I'm pretty sure this one was really good. Actually, I was enjoying it so much. I still think probably I was enjoying the summaries more than actual Dante. I think his ideas were fascinating, but honestly, it takes a lot of concentration to read. And even when I was in school, I struggled with this somewhat, but because of the summaries, I was able to sort of follow what was going on. But as a result of that, I don't have like a ton of quotes or anything that I really wanted to share. There were some interesting moments that when I was actually reading it, I was like, oh, that hits home, you know? But overall, I'm really glad that I continue this, and I'll probably continue with Paradise next We Love Jenny. So thank you, Jenny, for getting me to finally continue with Dante's Inferno, not the Divine Comedy, not the Inferno. The Inferno is the first one. I always get it confused in my head. Is the whole thing called the Inferno? No, the whole thing is called the Divine Comedy. And I still need to go like watch some videos on the cantos. I just remembered that I haven't done that. I want to check out Tom from LA Books. He's updating about every single canto. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, good. Glad I read it. Not for the faint of heart. It's a challenge for sure, which is why it took me. I mean, I probably could have finished it faster if I'd had like a 30-day loan. I could have finished it easily within that. 21 days was a bit quick for me. But anyways, that's that. Every time I set my phone down, it sticks itself to every surface. I love this though. Okay, moving on. I also finished Pimsleur Korean entirely, the whole thing, not just one audiobook in the series, but the entire thing. So yay, go me. This was great. I really enjoyed this. It just got me really speaking the language. And I'm trying to allocate more time to Spanish now in my language learning because I've just been really convicted that that's something that is very useful right now. Whereas Korean, it's fun. I don't know how useful it is for me, but it's fun. It's been useful in the sense that I learned how to learn language through Korean because I've been so motivated, and the whole language learning landscape has changed drastically because of YouTube. There's so many small creators out there that you can watch, and Korean is particularly great because a lot of times Koreans will subtitle their videos in Korean. I mean, some of them also subtitle in English, or at least one or the other. So that just makes it really easy. That's just, I mean, there are like American creators who do that, and absolutely there are, but it's just amazing how many Koreans actually do that. So that's been really nice. But I learned all of these ways of learning a language through learning Korean. I learned the things that I specifically need to work on. I learned how to think about language learning, how you can be at different levels in your reading, your listening, and your speaking. They can all be at different levels depending on what you've allocated your time on the most. You might have an expansive vocabulary, but have terrible grammar skills, or vice versa. So, I've realized some of my weak spots from learning Korean, some of the unique things as well about Korean, and how I can apply that to learning other languages like Spanish. I really had hit a wall with my Spanish, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to continue. I wasn't feeling motivated, but now that I'm literacy tutoring, and there's other reasons as well, I'm really motivated. And now that I've realized I can just find tons of Spanish speakers on YouTube. And the other nice thing about Spanish is there are Spanish ebooks and audiobooks freely available from libraries in the US, because everybody wants to promote learning Spanish in the US. So, because we need tutors, we need literacy tutors, we need bilingual speakers for translating all kinds of things. There's tons of resources out there now for learning Spanish that I wasn't aware of them previously, or there's just more money being allocated to that. There's more Spanish speakers on YouTube. I don't know which it is, but regardless, I now know how to learn Spanish. And so I am allocating more time. So huge thanks to Pimsleur Korean, because I am now going to be doing Pimsleur Spanish as well. And I'm just having a blast. It's like the most fun hobby, I think, for me. It like unites my desire to be useful with my desire to learn. So, because you can just immediately put language into practice as you're learning. I mean, there's some periods where you're not going to be talking, and so it won't feel useful. It'll just feel like you're acquiring stuff that you're not using. There definitely, if you're a beginner, that's probably the case for a lot of people, especially if you don't have friends who speak in your target language. It's just a really good feeling to be when you're able to start putting sentences together and talking with people. So, loving that. Next, let's talk about Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I feel like I talked about this already. If I did, feel free to skip ahead. But this is a romance. I'm not sure if it's a Christian romance. For some reason, going into it, I was thinking that it might have been a Christian romance. I'm not really sure. There's like a lot of language and references to sex and stuff like that. So, but also, I think the main characters might be Christians. So, I think it's really well written, and it's a very like modern take on a Christian romance, if that's what it is. And there's a lot of trauma. Lots of trigger warnings happening in this book, particularly for child death. So it says emotional, raw, real, and addictively delicious. That's from Tia Williams. I don't know who that is. But regardless, I think it was Christie's Purple Library who recommended this. And I can see why. It's like extremely engrossing. Like, I didn't want to put it down while I was listening to it. It was very emotional, every word. Like, I just felt like I was very connected. Unfortunately for me right now, it was a little bit emotionally intense, and I couldn't stick with it. I'm just having a period of needing a lot of relaxing things in order to sleep at night, because I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping, and because of my health, that's a big deal. I have to sleep well. So anything that's not helping me sleep well, I'm pretty much having to sideline a bit. And that's not to say I'm not reading anything exciting. I absolutely am. But this one, I feel like not only is it a little bit too exciting for me, but it's probably not quite my genre either. I'm not quite the target audience for this. So even though I was like excited to go out there and try something new, it's, I think, a little bit too intense. I need something more gentle for me personally to explore the romance genre. Really intense romances are a little bit, they just feel too strong for me. They make me feel on edge too strongly, can't sleep, that kind of feeling. So, but I would never say that this is not a book to, I would say that this is the book to read for somebody who is interested in a really emotionally raw and engaging romance, modern romance, African-American characters, Christian identity themes somewhat. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's really unique. Maybe because I feel like, is this an Own Voices author, Kennedy Ryan? I'm not sure. But there's some kind of unique cultural things to it. Like the main character, she has children with the man that she's kind of running away from, but still kind of loves in the story. And so navigating their relationship, their business partners, their parents, but now they're divorced. That's kind of their relationship that it starts at. So it's really unique in that way. I don't know if it's unique. Actually, I shouldn't say it's unique because I don't read a lot of romance. But for me, in my reading, this was pretty unique. And I might come back to it at some point when I'm feeling a bit emotionally stronger. I'm having the same problem right now with actually a horror sci-fi that I'm listening to. Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes, which I think I read another book by this author and I loved it. It was so good. And I think Crystal said, you would probably like this other book by the same author. So I picked it up. And lo and behold, Crystal was right. Thank you, Crystal. This is a sci-fi horror. And as you can see, I'm 57% of the way through it. I love it. It's so good. It's all I want to read, but it's very exciting, very tense, and I have to be careful reading it because I need relaxing things right now. So I'm listening to like 5 or 10% every night while I'm like cleaning up the kitchen or making dinner or whatever. Recently I discovered that watching any TV at all after 6 makes it harder for me to sleep. So I used to watch TV with Kevin while I was doing all the dinner time stuff. Now I'm just listening to audiobooks pretty much, or reading while I'm eating. So I'm pretty much listening to this at the very beginning of the night, like from 6 to 7-ish, somewhere in there. And I'm enjoying it so much. I wish I could listen to it longer every night, but it's just going to be a slow read for me. That's totally fine. That's just how it is. So anyways, that's what I'm in the middle of. I don't know why I went off on that tangent. I guess just to say that there is nothing wrong at all with Before I Let Go. I'm only DNFing it. I'm DNFing it at 10% even. And I still had all those emotions, even though I was only 10% in. There's definitely nothing wrong with this. It's just not right for me right now. I'm having a hard enough time with things that I'm like, this is my genre. Space horror is my genre. I'm having a hard enough time just enjoying that, much less exploring a new genre. Okay, moving on. Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I finally finished this. This took me a long time to read. Like, I don't even know, 5 months or something. I actually do have this No, I don't. I don't actually have this. I forgot. I just have the audiobook of this, or the ebook of this, I mean. So this is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archive series, which I was reading for Storm Along 2024. So as you can tell, since I'm finishing the 3rd book in February of 2025, I did not finish my Stormlight Archives reread yet. However, I'm enjoying it so much. I think because I'm taking it at my own pace and not trying to read it for a read along, I'm just enjoying it to the fullest. There were moments in this where I was a little bit, where it was dragging for me, for sure. There's probably like 30% near the end where I was just like, come on. It's also hard because my favorite character just gets like stamped on and spat at, and I feel like the equivalent. He does not have a lot of shining moments in this book, or really in the last book, and not in the current book that I'm reading either. So yeah, it's a bit of a slump in that sense because I am mainly in it for my main character, but still, regardless, I'm enjoying this so much. There was a really good Sander Lynch that I didn't remember most of when I was rereading this, even though it's my 3rd time reading this. So that's the thing with these books. They are so long that I usually end up listening to quite a bit of them. And then stuff that I've maybe listened to twice but never read with my eyes, I don't remember it all. So a lot of this, as I was reading it, I was like, I don't even remember this, even though I've read this twice before. So because I'm reading it, this is another reason why it's taking me a long time. I'm reading it all with my eyes. I'm not just listening to it like I've probably listened to 10% of this without reading it with my eyes on the page, because sometimes I have to get up and go to the bathroom or something, you know. I'm not like doing other tasks while listening to it. I'm not listening to it at any other time. I'm immersion reading it almost exclusively. So it's taking me a really long time because these are like 1,300 page books. So regardless, enjoying this so much. There's so many secrets that get revealed in this one. One of the biggest secrets that I was waiting for, I was like, I vaguely remember that this is the case, but I don't remember for sure, I guess. I don't remember how it happens. I don't think I'd ever actually read that scene where the secret is revealed with my eyes. So this time I was like, wow, I don't think I'm going to forget it. I don't think this time I will be able to forget the secret. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one this time around, despite there being like a 30%-ish long slump. There's just so much technical stuff happening. There's certain things explored that you've been waiting for it to be explored. And you can see on the cover here, I think this is Shalon. On the cover. Is that correct? I don't remember. Okay. So yeah, I think because this is Shalon's book, I'm pretty sure. I think that's what it is. Anyways, yeah, we spend a lot more time with Shalon and on her journey, getting to know her mentality. So Shalon, I barely even talked about her in the previous books, because they were about Kaladin and Dalinar mostly. Oh, no, this is Dalinar's book. So does that mean Shalon's book was the second one? I don't know. I feel like we spent a lot of time with Shalon, but the flashbacks we get in this book are actually Dalinar's. So we do spend a lot of time with Dalinar. I have a hard time with Dalinar. I used to just be full on love Dalinar, but honestly, the things we learn about him in this book are just like so horrible. I'm like, oh, Dalinar, you definitely needed a redemption arc. I don't know, but yeah, those parts were not my favorite of the book. I'm gonna be honest with you. Dalinar's parts were not my favorite, but I still love his arc. I love where he's going. I love what he's doing. So regardless, I think you could tell I enjoyed spending time with Shalon in this book. I think we spent a lot of time with her and doing interesting things with her. And so I became more invested in Shalon with this book. That's probably all I should say. I don't want to... It's really hard to talk about these books because there's so much happening. You can't really encapsulate it in a one-line neat elevator summary that isn't spoilery. This entire book is a spoiler warning, so I'll just leave it there. Okay, we'll move on. And I am reading book 4 now. Actually, I'm like over 10% in Rhythm of War. However, I'm taking a pause, and instead, I'm finally reading Dawnshard. I'm now 73% of the way through Dawnshard. That's what I've been reading a lot for relaxation, is Dawnshard. I didn't think that I had read this, but when I opened up the audiobook, it was like 50% in or something. So I wonder if I might have listened to some of it, but I don't even remember picking it up or DNFing it. So I'm really not sure, but I definitely have not finished Dawnshard before. We'll just call it my first read because I don't remember it. I kind of knew what it was about, sort of. I knew the character that we were following, I would say. But I didn't actually know what happens. So yeah, I'm really enjoying Dawnshard so much. And I'm also listening to Cytonic. I'm just loving Brandon Sanderson right now. I'm having the best time reading Brandon Sanderson, rereading Brandon Sanderson. But Cytonic is new for me too. So I'm reading a lot of new for me Sanderson. And that's keeping things fresh for me, I think. And I'm hoping that I'm among the people who love book 5. I've been looking forward to it so much. The end of this arc, I've been looking forward to it so much. So anyways, what's next? Let's talk about The Far Pavilions by M.M.K. I'm trying to pull it up for you. So this is going to be embarrassing. I don't really read historical fiction at all. And it took me like over a year to actually finish this and read this. So don't ask me about any of the historical circumstances. I don't know. But it's set in British colonial India, and it kind of explores the tension between the colonial power and the colonized. And we are following a main character who kind of has a foot in both worlds. He is born British, but he's raised in India for most of his life. And so he kind of sees both sides of it. And we spend a lot of time kind of sitting in discomfort in between both worlds. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It was very slow build, honestly, which is why I put this aside for a really long time, because I was just listening to other things at night. And there wasn't any reason why I had to hurry through this. So I didn't. It's gigantic. It's like a humongous book. I don't know how many pages it is. I'm sure it's over 1,000 pages. I actually forgot. I actually have this on my shelf somewhere. I found it at a thrift store, but I'm not going to hold it up because I already have it here. And this is a prettier cover anyways. The one I have is like old. It's very old and decrepit looking. I really enjoyed this, probably because I just took my time with it and was like, it's chill. I'm just going to listen to it at night. And so if you're willing to just sit back, let it roll over you, relax with it, not try to hurry along, I think you would really enjoy this as well. If you just want a long, delicious audiobook, very immersive, to enjoy, but not something to hurry through. Because I think if you're in a hurry, this is not probably going to work out. It just takes things at a very slow pace. It's like a very slow pace. So it's like his whole life. So it starts with people who raise him. Actually, it might even start with his parents. And then it kind of goes through, there's a period in his childhood that's kind of like, oh, okay, this is fine. But it's when he gets older, things start getting interesting. When he's a young man, it was also like, okay, this is fine. But then after a certain point, I don't know, I want to say like 50%, when kind of all of the threads of the first half start coming together, that's when it got really good for me, and I didn't want to stop listening. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and it was fun because I was listening to it a lot. I keep hitting my microphone, so sorry, that's probably annoying. When we were on our trip in December, whenever I was relaxing at night, I was listening to this a lot. And so it has like fond memories wrapped up in it for me. So this was a really good experience. Even though I think the first half of it, probably I felt kind of like 3-star about it. Now I'm kind of like 4-star, probably 4-star. That's probably good. Yeah. So I really enjoyed this. I definitely want to read more by her, just because I think it would be a good experience just to relax with her books if I can find more of them on audio. I know nothing about India. I know very little about British history. So I feel like I just sort of brushed elbows with it in this book, and I would like to know more. So yeah. Okay, moving on. Castle Rack. I can't even tell you when it happened, honestly. But the end of it happens during the Afghan War, I think. Where like Russia was involved and India and England was involved. Anyway, yeah. In Afghanistan. Anyways, Castle Rackrent by Mariah Edgeworth. This was very interesting. I don't feel like I understand it, but let's talk about it anyways. This is a novella. This is one of Mariah Edgeworth's Irish novellas. There's like several of them, like 3 or 5 or something. Irish novellas. I didn't realize this, but Mariah Edgeworth was Irish, and because Ireland was colonized by England, she has thoughts to share about that. I think this I'm so sorry, I keep hitting this. I think this story is about the toll on the morality of both the colonizers and the colonized that colonization takes on everybody. I think that's like her overall theme, but it's not like a preachy book. It's really entertaining. There were at times where I felt like skimming because it was like, so it's set in a family and it's narrated by a servant of the family. Honest Thady? I think Honest Thady? Honest Thady, I think that was his name. And he's narrating it, and he's a scream. And some of the introductory materials kind of makes you realize, actually, Thady, he's written intelligently. He's not written like with spelling mistakes, you know. I think he's supposed to be represented as a smart character, even though he tries to come off as very unassuming and humble. In the end, with the results of the end of the story, you're kind of like, whoa, is he an unreliable narrator? So he might be kind of an unreliable narrator. There's more to explore here than I realized. When I first read it, I was like, what even was this? What did it even mean? It's basically Thady narrating the events that happen during two or three owners of the land that he has always grown up on and worked, and their wives. And so at the end, I was kind of left feeling like, what is the point of this story? And I think some of the points that I already told you about are probably the point. That's how I ended up thinking about it. I'm just going to move this because I keep hitting it. So yeah, that's really all I can say. It's also very short. I also don't want to spoil it. But this was interesting. I'm going to have to read more of her Irish novellas for sure. I don't know if I'll have time by the end of the month, but this was for febregency. I just loved Belinda by Mariah Edgeworth last year. It was one of my top books, one of my top classics. I wouldn't say this falls into that category. I would still probably say it's like 3 stars. I can see a lot of thought behind it, and I really admire that. But as far as like enjoyment level, I mostly came away with it from it being like confused. So if someone could explain it somewhat to me a little more, I might enjoy it more, but it's very kind of life in the country, and it was funny. And there was parts that were like, whoa, I'm so engaged. And then there was parts where it was like, I feel like this is too much family detail and I don't care. So not a bad start for febregency, but not the best either, unfortunately. That is it for my wrap up so far. Hopefully I'll have some more things to wrap up for you before the end of the month. And I'll come back and tell you about it. And maybe I'll come back today and tell you about one more thing if I finish it. It's due at the library today, so I'm going to try and finish it. But I don't know if I'll have time to come back and tell you about it. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll see you soon. Hi guys, I lied. I'm back. It's like 5 minutes later. I remembered right after stopping talking that I actually did finish one other thing, and I've been having a hard time keeping track of my reading lately because I try to stay off my phone after 6 p.m. So I just have stacks of Post-its where I've written, and I have to go back and look and see, okay, I've been talking about this one and this one and this one. Did I finish them? If I have, then I can talk about them. If I have. So it's just, I used to just keep track of everything really closely in a Google Doc and write all of my thoughts in there. But now I have to keep track of them on paper. So sometimes they don't get transcribed. But anyways, I finished Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And wow, this blew me away. Oh, my hair. Whatever. This blew me away. I think I had read part of it before, but why, for goodness sakes, hadn't I finished it? I have no idea. It's so good. I enjoyed this so much. 5 stars. Wow. And the nice thing about the copy that I have through the library, it's digireads.com was where the ebook came from. And by the way, I was right that Purgatory that I showed you, that is the first one that I have in my Kindle. So that's the one that I started with. Anyways, yeah, the Digireads of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Still hitting the microphone. Had a biography that was a couple pages long about Samuel Taylor Coleridge and his writing style and some of the things that kind of animated his writing and motivated his writing, and that was so helpful. So he talks about how Coleridge was part of this kind of romantic thinking about nature. All of the poets of this period that are like a lot of the famous romantic poets, they would go on these long treks into the wilderness and just live out in nature for a time, and that's where they would draw their inspiration from. And it was fascinating because when Coleridge was busy with things and keeping busy, he was a really productive person. He had like a wife and kids, and got a lot of writing done and had good friends. But then at a certain point, when he didn't have to work anymore and he was just like, okay, I'm just gonna think for a living, he went totally off the rails, left his wife, got addicted to opium, I think it was, lost his friends because of his addiction, and he ends up dying young. It was like really it was fascinating looking at his life. He left the church at that point. Like his whole life went downhill after he stopped kind of keeping busy. You know what the Puritans used to say about idleness? I think it's true. I do think idleness is basically like it lets the devil have a hold in your life. That's a little bit extreme, obviously. But in his case, I've never seen a more obvious case of that, where it was like, okay, he really needed to keep busy making a living. When he was just left to his own devices, things went way downhill for him. But anyways, that was really fascinating to learn about him. At the time that I believe he wrote, well, I don't know exactly when he wrote the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I think it was, though, early, before that breaking point in his life with the opium and everything. But I'm still hitting it. I'm sorry. Oh, maybe I just need to raise it or something. I don't know. Gosh. Anyways, I don't feel like I'm normally hitting the microphone every 2 seconds. Anyways, I have some quotes here from this because I vlogged about it on Instagram. I'm doing daily-ish vlogs, sometimes every other day on Instagram to practice my Korean. So I vlogged with some quotes from Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So let's go. As idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. So this story is about a mariner who goes on a voyage to the South Pole. I don't actually know where they're heading in the beginning. I can't remember now. But they end up heading towards the South Pole. And he kills a bird. And that brings ill luck to the ship and the crew. And so basically we follow all of the ill luck that happens to the ship on their journey because he killed this bird. So at one point, the ship is just sitting there. There's no more wind. The wind is gone that was carrying them. As idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. I just thought that was like really beautiful. They were as still as a painting. Then, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. That was another thing they ran into. They ran out of water, and there was no rain. And so, I loved that line. It's so great. There is water everywhere in a ship. It's salt water, though. You can't drink it. So good. And then, 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. Well, I don't want to do any more spoilers, but there's a kind of creepy supernatural element that happens to the mariner and his kind of ill-fated ship. And I think that's probably all that I will quote. But this was just it was a great narrative. It was written in easy language, which I guess that was like the school of thought of him and his friends, was easier language, everyday man language. But it was still really beautiful. There was rhymes and I don't know, it was just, I forget what pentameter it's written in. But there's definitely a rhythm to it. But he didn't sacrifice anything to the rhythm. You know, it was like almost seemed effortless. But you know, if you've tried to write poetry, that is not effortless. But he was just that brilliant. So I enjoyed this so much, and I would highly, highly recommend it if you haven't read it before. Rime of the Ancient Mariner, my new favorite poetry that I've read in a really long time. I don't know if I've read any poetry in the last year other than this, but this was well worth reading, other than like biblical poetry. This was well worth reading. Definitely check it out. Hello there, guys. Okay, I'm back and looking more rumpled, I'm sure. I've just been laying on the couch for like an hour and a half and finishing 12 Angry Men by Reginald Rose. I don't actually know how long it was, but let's see. I started at 2:15 and it's now 3:45. So yeah, about an hour and a half. And I had probably like 1/3 of the play left to go. So it took me a while to read because I was just reading it. I wasn't listening to an audiobook or immersion reading it or anything. And I'm really glad that I finally picked this up. I learned about this on Storm Along Sprints. And so thank you. We have a teacher in the group, who comes to a lot of our chats, and she mentioned that she reads this with her students, and it's always like a hit with them. So thank you for recommending this. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's about kind of the socioeconomics. It was written in the 50s, in like, was it 1955? Somewhere around there. Yeah, and the author actually drew some inspiration because he was on a murder trial and they deliberated for 8 hours. And manslaughter trial. And he's like, this could be great material for a play, and he was right. The human drama happening, where people's kind of perceptions and biases kind of impact their opinions. And it's, if you know the story of 12 Angry Men, it's 12 jurors. It like starts at the beginning of their time in the deliberation room of a jury room, after listening to evidence for a murder trial. And the kind of poll at the beginning, is 11-1 in favor of guilty of murder. And it's a 16-year-old who's on trial. A 16-year-old African-American boy. And he will be sent to the electric chair if they vote guilty. But there has to be a unanimous verdict either way. Otherwise, they're a hung jury and there has to be a whole nother, trial. So it kind of examines the motivations and biases of all of the 12 jurors and how it ended up being 11-1, and what kinds of things make them change their minds is fascinating. And it's an examination of multiple things. It does have at its core faith in the American justice system, which I really like. There are certain principles in the American justice system that save it. One of the things that's really hard for, I think, a lot of like right, like conservative hardliners is the idea that we should always, if there is reasonable doubt, let a person go, because it's worse to kill an innocent man than it is to set a guilty man free. And that's something that I'm not sure everybody still agrees with, honestly. But that is the law in America. If there is reasonable doubt, you must acquit. And because that's built into it, that argument is thoroughly explored. And it's also innocent until proven guilty. And so the one man, the juror in here who holds out against the 11 in the first vote, he really hammers home that it's innocent until proven guilty. And he doesn't necessarily say it's better to let a guilty man free than to kill an innocent man. But I feel like that's kind of what he's getting at. And so all together, the 12 of them brainstorm, and well, some of them don't brainstorm very well, and they have to think over the case in minute detail, examine the witnesses over in their heads. They have to look past what all the prosecutor and the lawyers say, because that's all games in a circus. And they just look at the facts, and it's really interesting. I feel like this is a great one to read. Like, I kind of want to read this I feel like this would be a really good one to read with students. And I think that it's a great choice for school. But also, I was thinking with my literacy student, this might be great to help her understand the American justice system a little better. Because it is short, very engaging though. And it kind of shows what makes America's justice system different from a lot of the world. So yeah, I definitely would recommend this. Yeah, I would. It's not like there's a lot of zinger lines that are funny or entertaining. It's not like that exactly. But if you've seen the movie, you know, they come up with that kind of stuff. But it's really serious. You know, it's not like a laughing matter. And the people who aren't taking it seriously enough, the jurors who aren't taking it seriously enough, they really get heavily criticized because this is a man's life, you know, that's on trial. So you have to be really sure that he is guilty if you're going to send him to the electric chair. So yeah, I don't think there's really any quotes that I necessarily wanted to read. But there was just moments, you know, where it's like, oh, I thought it was obvious from the word go that he's guilty. I mean, nobody proved otherwise. That's not what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to prove that a man is innocent. They're supposed to prove that he's guilty. So that one had it backwards. That juror had it backwards. And it talks about kind of how background plays into it. And then there's one juror, he's probably the funniest one. A lot of the things that he says, I won't say that everything he says is funny, but he's like the quickest on his feet. He just insults the other jurors a lot because they disagree with him. And he says, how do you like him? It's like talking into a dead phone, you know, because he's like, I'm not getting anywhere by arguing with this guy. So there's things like that are like, it's like concise and it's well written in that sense, but it's not like I was laughing aloud while reading this. No. But yeah, and racism is examined. There's a lot in this very short play, and I'm really glad that I finally read it. And now Kev and I are going to have to go watch at least one of the adaptations. I think there's been at least 2 of them, to film. So we're going to have to watch another one. I know Henry Fonda's in one of them, but yeah, anyways, that's it for that. That's what I wanted to update you about. Thanks, guys. Hello there, guys. It is now, I always check the date, February 27th. It's a Thursday. And since it's a short month, I'm slamming this in on a weekday. So let's just jump in. It's my last update for the month. So I finished 2 more things, and I'm on the verge of finishing 2 more things very, very soon. I'll probably finish 2 more tonight, but I feel like I read a lot this month, because I have not been able to watch TV after 6 p.m. lately. And so I've been reading a lot more, at least, and listening to a lot more as well, and coloring a lot and drawing a lot. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of books in, and I'm happy to put off the next 2 books until next month. So, okay, let's jump into it. So first, this might be my favorite of the month. Dang. For real? Yeah, I think it was. Looking at everything. Dead Silence, excuse me. I kept, in my head, it was Ghost Ship the entire time I was reading it. And then I looked at the title and I was like, it's not Ghost Ship. It's a ghost ship, a salvage crew, and unspeakable horrors is the tagline. But it's actually called Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Wow. I loved this even more than, I think is this her debut? I loved this even more than her second book. Ugh. Which I find is not all that uncommon for me. I think authors have a lot more time when they're writing their first books usually. And so even though first books, debuts can have like lots of issues, because they're a new author, right? They're a debut author. They also have had usually many years sunk into this book that they are submitting, and that their editors are, because nobody has any expectations for them yet as far as their readership. They're not on the 1 book a year timeline pipeline yet. And so this book really showed what she can do when she has enough time on her side. I'm not saying that necessarily that was the case for her and her books. But in this case, even though I really enjoyed the second book and it was enough to definitely make me want to check this out, this one was better for me. So I think I picked this up not only because I loved the second book that she wrote, which is newer, but also because I believe Crystal was the one who told me, if you liked the second book, you'll probably like her first book too. And thank you, Crystal. You were so right. I really enjoyed this. This is sci-fi horror slash supernatural. And it does involve one of my very, very favorite tropes, which is ghosts, which I've discovered like later in life that I really enjoy ghost stories. So I've always been kind of a coward, so I never thought that I would really like ghost stories. But yeah, it's space horror. Honestly, it's just the perfect genre for me. It's like philosophical, it's spooky, it's sci-fi, you know, it's like really thoughtful in a lot of ways. So yeah, Ghost Station was her second book, which is I think why I was thinking this was Ghost Ship. So in this book, we are following a team lead is what her title is. She's leading a crew who is employed by a very, very rich space exploration, I guess you would say, company, and they are out on this team lead's last job before she is brought in and taken out of the workforce because she has too much trauma in her past, and they're like, you're not a good team lead. And so her character was really interesting. In both of the books, you're kind of like, is she reliable? Like both of their narrations, is neurotic might be the word, very internalized, had a lot of trauma in their past. Honestly, the two crews of these two books was a little bit cut and paste. They were a little bit similar. But, you know, I loved the crew. I loved their chemistry together. And so I was totally fine with that. Yeah, I really enjoyed being in the main characters' heads. They're so anxious. And I just feel like they both portray anxiety so well. Just the struggle of not knowing what's real and what's actually just your brain in your nervous system playing tricks on you. And she's been learning her entire life to think her way around her very intense mental disturbances. Like, it's not just anxiety for her. She's got several things going on here. And so there is something, and we're introduced to it very, like, chapter 1, something has happened to her crew, and she has ended up in a mental ward, and you're just like dying to hear the whole story. How did this happen? And she is narrating the story very slowly, and it feels like it's the real story, but it's actually her backstory that she's narrating to this crew, and it feels like the real story. Like, the backstory did not at all feel like an info dump. It was like, I'm here for the backstory. That's what I want to read. So yeah. And then the front story and the backstory meet in this great way in the end, and I just thought it was really well paced. I was riveted the whole time, and I just enjoyed it so much, and it was really exciting, and it was hard to finish by the end because I was just like, it's so exciting. But I really, really enjoyed it. I almost just want to listen to it again because I enjoyed the experience so much, and I probably will at some point because I loved it that much. So I don't see myself necessarily reading her second book over again. Like, I would say that one was like high 3 stars to 4 star. This one was like 5 stars, which is crazy. Yeah, I enjoyed them, and yeah, I enjoyed them. I'll just say that. I enjoyed them so much. Okay, and then the last thing that I have finished is my third thing that I finished for febregency. I was actually planning on reading 4 things for febregency, but yeah, even though I read a lot this month, I feel like reading with my eyes, not as much. I was mainly reading by audiobook. I read this entirely by audiobook. I read Dead Silence by audiobook. Yeah, like a lot of these that I finished this month were audiobook. Wow, I guess I didn't finish as much as I thought I did, but I just feel like the month has been cramped, maybe because it's a short month. If the month was like a little bit longer, I probably would probably wait a day and just add these next couple books in. But regardless, Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I've been wanting to read this for a very long time. I actually read it in high school, I think. I think this might have been the second one that I read after Pride and Prejudice, or maybe the third one after Mansfield Park. And I did not remember it at all. But I shockingly loved it. This is probably in third place for me. I was used to everybody else feeling like kind of middling about it. And so I didn't expect to enjoy it so much, but I love the love interest in this one. I don't know what it is about the Edwards and Edmonds, but the Eddies, the Eds, I love the Eds. I love how Jane Austen writes her Eds. So in this book, we are following two sisters, very, very different. One is very sensible, and one has very strong emotions. She's a 16-year-old and just feels things very strongly, and lets herself run away with her emotions, just like their mom. Their mom is the same way. And it's about the men who are attracted to them and kind of the ups and downs in those relationships. And there is some like crazy drama that happens. It's like fairly complex, and I really did enjoy it. So highly recommend. I don't have any quotes to share with you because I listened to it on audiobook, but I loved it. I'm so glad that I picked this up. I just picked it up while we were on febregency sprints. I was actually planning on reading a different book by the author of Rob Roy. I was going to read that one instead, but then I just needed an audiobook, and this was the perfect audiobook for me, so yeah. And I might still try to get to the other book by the author of Rob Roy, whatever his name is. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's it for the wrap up portion. And I will now share my March TBR, which isn't super big. So this will be a short-ish edition, which is good because I think it's already very long. Okay, so Anthem by Neal Stephenson. This is like the big chunky book I'm going to be reading for the next 2 months, and it's sci-fi, which is perfect. I am in such a sci-fi mood, guys. I'm in such a sci-fi mood, like so much. So I'm planning to eat this up. I just got the ebook. I'm ready to get going. So excited. Maybe I can start it tonight. We'll see. And next, Island Magic by Elizabeth Goudge. This is for Emma's Bookish Kingdom book club. Oh, and Anthem is for a big read-along that I'm doing, by the way, with several friends. Victoria, Tiffany, Stephanie, and Rich. I think that's everybody. All of the Missed Along co-hosts. The Island Magic book club is Emma's Bookish Kingdom book club, which I have not even made it to either of the meetings yet this year, unfortunately. That was very sad to me. I keep missing them. I need to pay better close attention to Discord. I've been on Discord slightly more recently because I've been watching shows with people on Discord. Tip. Discord lets you screen share stuff from like different streaming services, so. And then I'm really looking forward to that one because it's now on ebook. It wasn't on ebook last time I tried to read a Goudge. I don't think this one was on ebook. So, and then we have Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is book 2 in the Crimson Moth series, which is a romantasy series, and I'm very excited that book 2 is out very soon. In fact, I think it's already out, so I'm waiting for that to come. I'm in line for it at the library. And then Apothecary Diaries Volume 13 is also coming out in March. Oh, maybe Rebel Witch is also coming out in March, not February. And for middle grade March, I'll be reading And Then There Were None by Elizabeth Enright with Tiffany. I'm so excited. We've been reading this series very slowly together, and this is my favorite book in the series, so I'm very excited to read it with her and Claire. It's a buddy read with Claire too. Yay, middle grade March. Other things that I have down for middle grade March are things that mostly Kate Howe told me about. So, Freddie the Pilot, The Water Horse by Dick Kingsmith, Rabbit Hill by Robert Lawson, Each Little Bird That Sings by Deborah Wiles, and then Thimble Summer, which is one that Tiffany recommended to me. I also really want to read Dog's Body by Diana Wynne Jones. But I want to read that one with Victoria, and I know that March is not the month because she's going to be busy with Anthem. So, I have that down here, but that one will probably have to wait. And then that's everything. Yeah, pretty short TBR this month. But I do have several other things like actually that I'm listening to and enjoying. So, what do I have out right now? Dawn Shard, that's one of the ones that I'm almost finished with. I'm literally 2% from the ending. And then, oh no, I forgot to talk about the question of canon. Okay, I should talk about that too. I also finished the question of canon. I've been having trouble remembering everything lately because I can't just put it in my phone as soon as I finish it, because unfortunately I can't look at my phone after 6, which I'm usually reading after 6. So I finished the question of canon for Faith's Discord by Michael J. Kruger. Yeah, this was a book that we were reading for We Love Jenny, so it's a We Love Jenny pick. It was actually a book I was supposed to buddy read with Jenny, and Tiffany's husband recommended it to us because Jen and I were having conversations like, how was the canon chosen? How were those decisions made? Jen was really interested in church history as a historian and a Christian. So I feel like she was more of an extrinsic model person, whereas this author is an intrinsic model person. So it was really helpful that Peter recommended this, because I was coming at it with the mindset of like, I bet Jen would have just been fascinated to hear the intrinsic model, because I think in college she was taught the extrinsic model. But most Christians throughout history, as well as now, are really intrinsic model people, which what that means is that the canon developed naturally as a part of Christian teaching, that it wasn't enforced by outside forces, and that it was kind of not unexpected that happened, and how the canon developed very naturally. So, and there were some other great points. I mean, there were so many interesting quotes in this. Yeah, I probably should look up some quotes, but I didn't because I completely forgot that I had finished it. Let me see. It really emphasizes the point that historians are not actually unbiased. We all have our biases going into everything, even though historians like to think of themselves as like applying science, the scientific method, which is supposed to be unbiased. But usually when you're practicing the scientific method, you have a hypothesis in mind, and so that's what you're trying to get, is the hypothesis. That's what you're expecting. And so you kind of tailor the scenario that you're testing to make sure that you can prove the hypothesis. And sometimes there are surprises. There's all kinds of surprises that happen as just like by accident in science. But anyways, okay, so some other tenets of the extrinsic model claim that the New Testament authors were unaware of their own authority, and he argues against that. Like, if you read Paul especially, it's like, no, Paul was very aware of his authority. He was not surprised. He would not be surprised to hear that his letters became gospel. The fifth tenet of the extrinsic model is that the New Testament books were first regarded as scripture at the end of the 2nd century, and that hypothesis was formed based on the fact of Irenaeus's defense, which is a bit stretched. His defense is a bit stretched from modern perspectives. It made perfect sense from the worldview of the time, but I won't get into all the details there. But so he argues that even though it's hard to argue that the canon was developed earlier, it actually is hard to prove otherwise, just because there's so few sources. But he does go in and like he cites Justin Martyr and several other ancient authors to talk about why he thinks the argument for a canon being formed earlier, even if it wasn't completely solidified, like which exact books would be in it, there was certain books that were never in question, like the Gospels. Those were quoted everywhere, So that was really interesting. The third tenet of the extrinsic model insists that early Christians were averse to written documents. He talks about even though most Christians were illiterate, because that's the kind of religion it was appealing to the slaves and the poor, the outcasts, because Jesus accepts anybody and he loves everybody. And so most of the people were illiterate, but actually a lot of the forefathers of Christianity were Jewish, which means they were not illiterate. They went to like Jewish schools and learned how to read the scripture. And that's another argument he makes for a written canon, is that these people came from Judaism, which had written scriptures. So, yeah, I just felt like he made so many good points, and I enjoyed it so much. I wish I could find like an actual quote, but I feel like that's probably enough. Like you probably kind of get what it's about. But there were some great quotes that were just like I would love to actually share with you. But I'm not going to be able to just like find them quickly, unfortunately. So anyways, I think I quoted one on Instagram. I don't think I've quoted one on YouTube, so I can't send you there. But anyways, I did finish that. Thank goodness I checked my apps. Let's see, things I'm in the middle of. How Not to Read the Bible by Dan Kimball. In the middle of that, which can sort of be set on the back burner because Tiffany is, and Dia and Chrissy from Chrissy's Purple Library, and there's one more co-host, I'm pretty sure. They're co-hosting a Christian read-along again, and I've never actually joined. I've never joined it, and I really wanted to. I don't think I've joined one. I want to say that I have, but I don't think I have. Because I was always, I think, reading other Christian nonfiction. But now I technically am, but this one, there's no reason that I need to finish this one now. So, and that book that I will be reading, oh dear. I have a hold on it, but I don't actually. Shoot. The announcement is on Tiffany's channel, so I will just double check that. Yes. It's Power Through Prayer by E.M. Bounds. I've never read E.M. Bounds at all, so I would love to get an E.M. Bounds under my belt. Other things that I'm in the middle of. I told you how not to read. I'm in the middle of The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. And I was listening to Twilight in Spanish, Crepúsculo, but I stupidly sent it back when I thought that the ebook also went back. But then I was able to borrow the ebook again. So now I'm waiting for the audiobook again. I'm about to start The Dark Hours by Michael Connolly with Kevin in a couple of weeks when we go on our next doctor appointment. And that's it. Wow, I feel like... Oh no, that's not it. There's one more. I'm also listening to The Two Towers as well on Hoopla, but that's not what I was thinking. And of course, I'm reading Rhythm of War. That's going to be a multi-month project. But I've been listening to Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson, and you can see how close I am to finishing that. Focus! This is the third book in the Cytonic book series, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it because I love it. It's so good. It's so much better than book 2. Yeah, so I'll talk to you guys about that one when I'm done. Should be pretty soon. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that is it. So thank you guys for joining me for this very long wrap-up. I know these wrap-ups are always very long, so thanks for hanging in there with me. Let me know your thoughts down below. And I did finish the chapter in Dostoevsky's Joseph Frank biography. Joseph Frank's Dostoevsky biography. And I've been using a manga chibi book, How to Draw Chibi Characters, to chibify my favorite K-pop idols. What else? Anything else? I don't think so. The Poets and Lunatics by G.K. Chesterton. I really wanted to read that in January, but I could only find it on Hoopla. I can't really read on Hoopla normally, unless it's an audiobook. So, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to that one for the Bookish Kingdom book club. But anyways, I would love to read that at some point. Even though I've been a bit hit and miss. Actually, I've been pretty much entirely miss with G.K. Chesterton. I haven't really liked anything that I read by him, unfortunately. Anyways, that's all, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know down below what your favorite thing that you read this month was and what you're really excited about to read in March. About reading in March. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.